Sophia stood by the kitchen window, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of coffee. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a golden glow across the immaculate countertops. On the surface, her life appeared flawless. Married for 15 years to Ethan, a successful businessman with an easy charm, she lived in a sprawling house surrounded by manicured gardens. She had everything she once dreamed of: comfort, stability, and love. Yet, as Sophia sipped her coffee, a faint unease stirred within her. It was the kind of discomfort that crept in quietly, unnoticed at first, like a draft seeping through a closed window. For weeks now she had felt it: a distance in Ethan's voice, a flicker of hesitation in his gaze. She tried to push the thoughts away, but they clung to her, persistent and invasive. Across the lawn, Maya, their housekeeper, emerged from the guesthouse carrying a basket of freshly laundered clothes. She was young, 28 at most, and effortlessly beautiful, with a quiet demeanor that made her almost invisible. Sophia had never given Maya much thought beyond her duties, but lately, she couldn't help but notice how Ethan's tone softened whenever he addressed her, how his laughter seemed a little more genuine in her presence. Sophia shook her head, scolding herself for her suspicions. Ethan wasn't the kind of man to stray. He had always been devoted to her. They had built a life together, weathered their share of challenges, and come out stronger for it. This was just her mind playing tricks on her, she reasoned. That evening, the three of them sat down for dinner, a quiet, routine affair. Ethan, as always, filled the silence with stories from work. Sophia listened, her eyes fixed on his face, searching for any sign of the man she once knew so well. "Today was exhausting," Ethan said, reaching for his glass of wine. "But I couldn't stop thinking about something important." Sophia tilted her head, intrigued. "What is it?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, his gaze flickering toward Maya, who was clearing the table. "It's about Maya." Sophia's stomach tightened. She forced a smile. "What about her?" "Well," Ethan began, leaning back in his chair, "she's been with us for years now. She's done so much for this family, and I feel like we haven't done enough in return." "I was thinking," he trailed off, as if searching for the right words. Sophia's heart raced. What was he trying to say? "I think we should help her with her future," Ethan continued. "Maybe offer her more than just a place to stay and a paycheck. She's practically family after all." Maya paused, her hands frozen mid-motion. She looked at Ethan, then quickly glanced away, her cheeks flushing. Sophia's smile faltered. "What exactly are you suggesting, Ethan?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I think we should let her move into the main house. Give her a more permanent role here." The words hit Sophia like a sudden gust of wind, knocking the air from her lungs. She stared at Ethan, searching his face for a hint of irony, but his expression was earnest. "Move into the house," she repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. "Yes," Ethan said, his tone firm but gentle. "She's been loyal to us. It's the least we can do." Sophia's mind swirled with questions. Why now? Why this sudden generosity? And why did his suggestion feel less like an act of kindness, and more like the beginning of something far more complicated? Maya quickly excused herself, mumbling something about needing to finish her chores. The room fell silent, the tension thick and unyielding. Sophia set her fork down carefully, her hands trembling. "Ethan," she said softly, "this is unexpected. Don't you think we should talk about this more before making such a decision?" Ethan reached for her hand, his touch warm but unfamiliar. "I just want to do the right thing," he said. "Trust me on this, Sophia." But as she met his gaze, she realized with a sinking heart that trust was exactly what was slipping away. Sophia lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling as Ethan slept soundly beside her. His suggestion replayed in her mind like a haunting melody, refusing to fade. She thought about Maya, her quiet presence, her sudden nervousness during dinner. Something was amiss, and no matter how much she wanted to believe in her husband's good intentions, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something that would shatter the illusion of her perfect life. By morning, Sophia had made up her mind. She would watch, she would listen, and she would find out the truth, no matter the cost. Sophia couldn't shake the tension from the night before. Ethan's suggestion lingered in her mind like an unanswered question, unraveling every shred of certainty she had about their marriage. For years, they had shared a life built on trust and understanding. Or so she thought. She moved through the house that morning with a purposeful calm, observing everything with heightened awareness. Maya was in the kitchen, her slender frame leaning over the sink as she scrubbed dishes with precision. Sophia studied her, searching for something. Guilt, fear, or even defiance. But Maya's face was blank, her movements mechanical. "Maya," Sophia said, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of running water. Maya turned, startled. "Yes, ma'am." Sophia hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "About last night. Ethan's suggestion. What do you think about it?" Maya froze for a split second before composing herself. I wasn't expecting it. He's very kind, but I don't want to impose on your family, ma'am." Sophia smiled faintly, though her chest tightened. "You've been with us for years, Maya. We're practically family, right?" She let the words hang in the air, waiting for a reaction. Maya nodded, her expression unreadable. "Yes, ma'am. I'm grateful for everything you and Mr. Ethan have done for me." Grateful. The word stung. Was it gratitude Ethan was looking for, or something more? Sophia nodded and walked away, her mind racing. She couldn't pinpoint what, but something about Maya's demeanor felt off. Reserved, yes, but also evasive. Later that day, Sophia decided to confront Ethan. She found him in his home office, poring over a stack of papers. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, a picture of a man immersed in work. "Do you have a minute?" she asked, stepping into the room. Ethan looked up, surprised but welcoming. "Course. What's on your mind?" Sophia closed the door behind her and leaned against the frame, her arms crossed. "I've been thinking about what you said last night. About Maya moving in." Ethan's smile faltered. He set his pen down and leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady but unreadable. And I don't understand why this is coming up now. She's been living in the guest house for years without issue. Why the sudden concern for her future?" Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sophia, it's not sudden. I've been thinking about this for a while. Maya has no family, no real support system. She's dedicated years of her life to us, and I feel like we owe her something more." Sophia narrowed her eyes. "We pay her generously, Ethan. We've always treated her with respect. Isn't that enough?" Ethan's jaw tightened. Sometimes people need more than money or respect. They need to feel valued, supported. Part of something bigger. His words sounded noble, but Sophia couldn't ignore the flicker of defensiveness in his tone. "And what about me, Ethan? How do you think this makes me feel? Like I'm being replaced in my own home?" Ethan stood, his expression softening. He reached for her hands, but she stepped back. "Sophia, that's not what this is about. You're overthinking it." "Am I?" she challenged. "Because it feels like there's more to this than you're telling me." For a moment, Ethan said nothing. The silence stretched between them, heavy and unyielding. Finally he spoke. "You're reading too much into this. Maya is just someone we're helping. That's all." Sophia studied his face, searching for the truth beneath his words. She wanted to believe him, but her instincts screamed otherwise. That night, as they sat down for dinner, the tension between them was palpable. Maya served the food in silence, avoiding eye contact with both of them. Ethan, ever the conversationalist, tried to fill the void with stories from work, but his voice lacked its usual warmth. As the evening dragged on, Sophia excused herself and retreated to the bedroom. She closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling deeply. Her heart was heavy with doubt, her mind a whirlwind of unanswered questions. Why was Ethan so insistent on helping Maya? Was it truly compassion, or was there something else driving his actions? And why did Maya seem so hesitant, almost fearful, when Sophia brought up the subject? Sophia walked to the window, staring out at the guest house where Maya stayed. The lights were on, and she could see Maya's silhouette moving inside. She wondered what secrets the young woman carried, and whether those secrets would ultimately unravel the life Sophia had worked so hard to build. For the first time in years, Sophia felt like a stranger in her own home. And as she stood there, bathed in the pale glow of moonlight, she realized one thing with chilling clarity. Whatever was happening between Ethan and Maya, it was only the beginning. Sophia woke the next morning with a heaviness in her chest, the kind that comes from too many unanswered questions. The air in the house felt thick, charged with an unspoken tension that seemed to follow her every step. She couldn't decide what was worse: the possibility that Ethan's intentions were innocent, or the nagging fear that they weren't. Maya was already in the kitchen when Sophia came downstairs. The younger woman worked quietly, her hands moving swiftly as she arranged fresh flowers on the dining table. Sophia stood in the doorway, observing her. There was something almost fragile about Maya's presence that morning, as if she were holding on to some unseen weight. "Maya," Sophia said, breaking the silence. Maya turned, startled as usual. "Yes, ma'am." Sophia stepped into the room, choosing her words carefully. "I've been meaning to ask. How are you feeling about everything Ethan said? You seemed surprised." Maya hesitated, her eyes darting toward the floor. "I was surprised," she admitted softly. "I didn't expect him to say something like that." Sophia nodded, studying her carefully. "And how do you feel about it? About moving into the house, being more involved in our lives?" Maya's lips parted as if to respond, but no words came out. She finally shrugged, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to cause any problems, ma'am. I'm grateful for everything you've done for me. I just want to do my job." Sophia's stomach churned. There it was again, the hesitation, the evasiveness. It was as though Maya was holding back something she couldn't bring herself to say. "Has Ethan ever said anything to make you uncomfortable?" Sophia asked, her tone firm but measured. Maya's eyes widened and her cheeks flushed. "No, ma'am," she said quickly, almost too quickly. "He's always been kind to me." Sophia wanted to press further, but she stopped herself. Pushing too hard might drive Maya into silence, and right now, Sophia needed her trust. Later that day, Ethan returned home earlier than usual, his mood seemingly lighter. He greeted Sophia with a kiss on the cheek, his charm as effortless as ever. But she couldn't ignore the flicker of unease in his eyes when she mentioned Maya. "I talked to Maya this morning," Sophia said casually as they sat together in the living room. Ethan glanced up from his phone, his expression unreadable. "Oh, what about?" "Just about your idea," Sophia replied, keeping her tone neutral. She seemed a little uncertain. Ethan nodded, setting his phone aside. "That's understandable. It's a big change for her. But I think she'll come around once she sees we're serious about helping her." Sophia's pulse quickened. "And why are you so invested in helping her, Ethan? We've had other housekeepers before. Why is she different?" Ethan leaned forward, his gaze steady. "Because she doesn't have anyone else, Sophia. She's been through a lot, and I just want to make her life a little easier." "Is that so hard to understand?" His voice carried a note of frustration, but Sophia couldn't tell if it was genuine or deflective. "I just want to make sure this is about helping her and not something else," she said quietly. Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's always about something else with you lately, isn't it?" Sophia flinched at his words, her chest tightening. Before she could respond, he stood and left the room, leaving her alone with her spiraling thoughts. That evening, as the house settled into silence, Sophia found herself pacing the floor of their bedroom. She replayed every interaction, every word, searching for the cracks in Ethan's carefully composed demeanor. The more she thought about it, the more certain she became that he was hiding something. Unable to bear the weight of her doubts, Sophia made her way to the guest house. The night air was cool and crisp, the sound of crickets filling the stillness. She hesitated at the door, her heart pounding. Then, summoning her courage, she knocked. Maya opened the door, her face pale and her eyes wide with surprise. "Ma'am." Sophia forced a small smile. "I'm sorry to bother you this late, but I need to talk to you. Privately." Maya hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. The guest house was modest but tidy, a reflection of Maya's meticulous nature. Sophia sat on the small couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I need you to be honest with me, Maya," Sophia began, her voice steady but firm. "Is there something going on between you and Ethan?" Maya froze, her expression a mixture of shock and fear. "No, ma'am," she said quickly, shaking her head. "I would never." "Then why does it feel like there's something you're not telling me?" Sophia interrupted, her tone sharp. Maya looked down, her hands trembling. "He's been kind to me, but sometimes he says things that make me uncomfortable. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to cause trouble." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. The words hung in the air, heavy and damning. This wasn't just about charity or compassion. Ethan had crossed a line. As she left the guest house, Sophia's mind raced with anger and disbelief. She didn't know what her next move would be, but one thing was clear. The man she thought she knew was a stranger, and the life she had built was beginning to crumble.